Now, a big addition to Bitwig 5 is the introduction of the MSEGs, which are multi-segment envelope generators. And as you know with Bitwig, they like their modulation effects and how you can click on things and modulate parameters in your instruments to create some extra interest in your productions. As you've seen in previous versions, you've got ADSR envelopes, you've got LFOs, but a really neat, nifty new one with the MSEGs is the curves. And with curves, this allows you to create your own custom envelope shapes. So the idea with the MSEGs is that you can draw your own custom envelopes and you can modulate a signal. So with curves, this is an LFO modulator and grid module that you can sync to your beats and grooves. So let's see how it works. First, let's talk about this instrument that I'm using. So I'm using this gritty lead instrument, and it sounds like this. And I'm going to show you now, if you click on this plus sign here, it brings up the modulators pop-up window, and I'm going to select curves. So I'm going to click OK, and what I've got here is a multi-stage LFO. As you can see, it's ramping up, and then it's got all these other ramps up here at the bottom as well. Now, I can click on this to modulate a parameter like you've seen in previous versions with Bitwig. So I'm going to click on here, it starts flashing, and anything that goes blue, I can modulate. Now, I want to modulate the filter section here on this gritty lead synth, and I'm going to pull it down, and you can see the modulation that's happening. I'm going to click on this to stop the assignment, and when I play back, you're seeing and hearing the modulation that's happening. Now, if I click on this little arrow over here, now it expands to show the curve view. I can change the speed in hertz, and slow it down. So you can see it's going very slowly through the movements here of that LFO modulation. I can also change over here how it's being modulated over the time. So here it's using hertz, or I could choose a bar. So this is a bar length, and I can change that speed by speeding it up or slowing it down. So obviously I could try and use different things here for different intervals if I wanted to lock with my grid better. But for now, let's just use hertz while we explain the rest of the parameters. As you can see, this is the shape of the curves. If I click it, it opens up a bigger view here. Now, this is the default shape of the LFO, but you've got other tools you could use to change the shape. But before getting into the tools, you see you've got all these node points that are created, and you can drag them to change the shape. And it's locking to the grid here because I've got snap enabled. So that'll lock to the interval value that I've got set up over here. And I can change the height of these LFOs at the end here, or maybe shorten this and widen this and bring these up. So it's really easy to shape this default view here. And there's also a selection of custom envelope shapes that have been created that you can use. So if you click this envelope icon over here, it shows you a selection of different wave shapes that have been created. So I can have something, for example, like this, where there's the auto wow. I click OK, you see that's the wave shape there. And these have been placed in different types of categories over here. We've got envelopes, you've got lookup shapes, periodic shapes, and sequences. So there is a ton of different shapes that you can go for if you're really looking for some crazy shapes that you want to use for your LFO modulation. But what's even better is to go in and draw in your own shapes. So I can select this draw tool. I can draw in my own multi-stage LFO now. Change the shape. And this is the freehand tool, but what I really like is when you start using the defined shapes here. So I've got sort of like a square waveform now that I can draw in, and obviously it's snapping, and I can change as I go to each different grid value here what it looks like. Then going over to maybe some of these like sawtooth wave shapes that really work great. Flip it around the other way. And as you can see, I'm drawing on the top side and the down side of here. And And I can click this to change the shape between uni and bipolar. And if I click here again, you can see you're seeing it on both views. So it just allows you to have that envelope shape across both sides. I can also turn off the snapping, so now it's not locked to any snapping on that grid, or I can change that interval on the grid. So as I increase this up, you can see those grid lines changing. And here, making a more narrow view, maybe 4x4. And obviously you've got much bigger shapes now. So I could have that over there and then maybe jump this up to 16 and shape it differently for this section here. Now, going back to this view over here, you've got this depth parameter here, and this allows you to change the amount of modulation decided by the view over here. So I can reduce that, and you can see that little ball motion of the movement is following that shape less. So even though you might draw in a crazy shape, you might want to change this depth to change the movement that's actually happening. So you can have quite a subtle modulation, even though it's following quite a complex grid shape. I'm going to push that right back up here. And then over here, we can smooth the time. So that's just smoothing out the changes for that. So maybe I'm going to slow this down and then smooth this out, which is quite nice. And obviously here I can click that again to have it going on both sides. And what's even better is you can use multiple MSEG modules to modulate on one instrument. So I could add another curves module over here and get this to modulate some other parameters. So how about I open up this first curves here, click on this, and choose curves 2 to modulate this speed or the rate of curves 1. So now when I play back, I got this. That's got this speed over here with curves 1. And then I've got curves 2 over here. And this, if I just click on the shape, I could go in here and draw in another shape, just create some extra modulation here. So as you can see, it's very powerful having these custom envelopes that you can use to modulate parameters in your instruments.